No, we were told not to. So they said if we turn it on, it won't go on fire. Here, in this room.
Oh, yeah.
Rabbi. Good, doing well. Thank you, thank you. No, still don't think I could find the match. You're not gonna win. You have to put some form, right? This one keeps popping off on me. It's just like, I think we're like long. It's just every time I take a deep breath, it pops off.
That's from COVID.
I got my shot.
Yes. You have any problems?
I don't think so. I'm a little tired, but-
They're saying this third one is giving people the about the same. I got even worse. My arm didn't. Test.
Familiar folks out here?
Hi, Zoomer. Hello to the Zoomers. Hi, Zooms.
Find my Bim Bum page. Just on my Bims. Yay, da 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 da, yay, da 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 da. Yay, da 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 da, yay, da 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 da. Yay, da 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 da, yay, da 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 da. Yai da 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 yai da 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 yai da yai da da yai da 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 yai da 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 yai da 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 2, 3, 4 yai da 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 ya da 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 da. Ya da 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 da. Ya da 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 da.
And
Bim bum bim 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 bum bim 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 bum bum bim bum bim 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 bum bim 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 bum. Hey, Shabbat Shalom. Hey, Shabbat Shalom. Shabbat 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 Shalom. Shabbat Shalom. Shabbat Shalom. Shabbat 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 Shalom. Shabbat Shabbat. Shabbat, Shabbat, Shalom. Shabbat, 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 Shalom. Shabbat, Shalom. Hey, Shabbat, Shalom.
Yay!
Shabbat, 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 Shalom.
Paula, what time is it, Paula?
8:02.
8:02?
Good news. Time for good
The
news.
official timekeeper says it's 8:02.
Good news. We're all here tonight.
That's
the
the good news. Anybody with good news? Carol's got her hand up. And I'm going to hold the mic here for you.
Good news for my extended family. We have a new addition. It is my sister's 9th great grandchild. Can't tell you her name because she won't.
9th great grandchild?
9th great grandchild, my 9th great niece, which sounds terrible.
That's really great.
Anyway, I can't tell her name because she won't be named till tomorrow.
Okay, in a hurry. Got it. Well, mazel tov, mazel tov, mazel tov. Anyone else with some good news tonight? Anything? Good news? Yeah? Hang on, I'm gonna come over here to Richard, and then I'll head over to Jeff.
My good news is that my elder son, Jonathan, who's the CEO of the Midnight Riders, which is a not-for-profit group of New England Revolution nuts who occupy the fort, as it's known there, ran a golf tournament last Sunday. They raised $9,000, which they donated to an organization that's helped people with dogs, and particularly service dogs who can't afford to maintain them, to be able to maintain them. So I'm very proud of him. He worked very hard for that.
That's great.
That's a beautiful thing. Great mitzvah, great mitzvah.
Midnight Riders.
I'll be up there, don't worry. Leanie.
Mike and I celebrated our anniversary yesterday, 20 years.
Mazel tov. Congratulations. 20 many more.
20 years.
All right, enjoy. Healthy, healthy, healthy. Anybody else? While I'm down here? Howard? No? All right, let's see. Yeah, I know. I remember Jeff wanted to.
Thanks to our friends and extended family, we ran a very successful memorial. It was the 12th memorial golf tournament in memory of our son Andy. It was great. It was great.
Good weather.
It was actually cold in the morning, and the decision that actually Gail made. Of course, I was gone. The lunch was inside, not outside. It was cold.
Actually, because all the players from
That's great.
Tampa, didn't want to freeze. Not that they're going to win on Sunday, because they're not. Yes, Mark.
I have a couple of jars of drunken etrogene on my refrigerator. We started the process of making etrog liqueur for 5782,
Wow.
Including for Pesach soon, right?
including for Pesach too.
I think that's good news.
Let's just get through all of this. Let's just go right through the year and be done with it.
Oop.
Adele
has some good news.
Adele has some good news, so we'll get on over here. Hold on 1 second.
We had an absolutely wonderful Simchas Torah celebration here with kids dancing, ha, ha, ha. And it was just awesome. So thank you to the rabbis and thank you to all who attended.
It really was fun. It was a lot of fun.
It was great.
So for those of us that are here tonight as well, Danny Karras is having his bar mitzvah this Shabbos, tomorrow afternoon. And Danny will be joining us, I hope, tonight sometime. And when he does, he'll be taking part in the service a little bit too. So that's more good news. So with that, why don't we welcome the angels of peace
Yes.
on page 13. Page 13, Shalom Aleichem.
Shalom Aleichem, Malachei Asharet, Malachei Elyon, Mimelech, Malchei Hamlachim, Akadosh Baruch Hu, Boachem L'Shalom, Malachei HaShalom, Malachei Elyon, Mimelech Malchei Hamlachim, Hakadosh Baruch Hu, Baruch Hu Nil Shalom, Malachei HaShalom, Malachei Elyon, Mimelech Malchei Hamlachim, Hakadosh Baruch Hu. Tzedkem l'shalom, Malachei HaShalom, Malachei Elyon, Mi Melech Malchei Hamlachim, Hakadosh Baruch Hu.
And at the bottom of page 13 to the left, let's read together. The sun on the treetops no longer is seen. Come, let us welcome Shabbat, the true queen. Behold her descending, the holy, the blessed. With her God's angels of peace and of rest. Come now, dear queen, with us abide. Come now, Shabbat, our bride. Shalom Aleichem, angels of peace. Yedid Nefesh, page 14.
Yedid Nefesh al Harachaman, Mishach Avdach, El Ritzonach, Yarutz Avdach, Kimo Ayal, Yishtachaveh, Emo Hatarach, Yerav lo Yedidu Tach, Mino Fetzu V'chol Tam. Yada da 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 da, yada da 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 da, yada da 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 da, yada da 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 da, yada da 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 da, yada da 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 da, yada da 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 da, yada da 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 da. Yada da 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 da, yada da 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 da. Yada da 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 da, yada da 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 da.
Bottom of 14, together in English. Dear God, help us now to make this a new Shabbat. After noise, we seek quiet. After crowds of indifferent strangers, we seek to touch those we love. After concentration on work and responsibility, we seek freedom to meditate, to listen to our inward selves. We open our eyes to the hidden beauties and the infinite possibilities in the world you are creating. We break open the gates of the reservoirs of goodness and kindness in ourselves and in others. We reach toward one holy, perfect moment of Shabbat. L'chuna Ranana, page 15.
Lechu neranena, lechu neranena, lechu neranena ladonai. Lechu neranena, lechu neranena, lechu neranena ladonai. Naria, letzor yishenu nikadma, fana b'toda. Naria, letzor yishenu, bizmirot naria lo. Lechu neranena, lechu neranena, lechu neranena ladonai. Lechu neranena, lechu neranena, lechu neranena ladonai. Arbayim shana kut bedor, v'omaram toev levavhem, v'hem lo yedu drachai, Hashem nishbati v'yapi, im yivon el menuchati.
And as we wait for Danny to come on up on the pulpit, he's going to lead us in the responsive reading on page 16. Hi, Danny.
Hi, Danny.
Right here.
I think you got taller since last week.
He did. He got taller.
You got taller.
He's almost as
16.
tall. I think he's as tall as his brother.
Getting there.
And he's going to lead us responsibly together. Page 16.
Sing a new song to Adonai. Acclaim Adonai, all people on earth.
Sing to Adonai, proclaim each day God's awesome might, announce to the world God's glory and wonders.
For Adonai is great, deserving of praise. Adonai is alone to be revered as God.
All the gods of the nations are nothingness, but Adonai created the heavens. Majesty.
Majesty and might accompany God. Splendor and strength adorn God's sanctuary.
Acknowledge Adonai, all families of nations. Acclaim God's majestic power. Acknowledge God's glory and bring him tribute.
Worship Adonai in resplendent reverence. Let the earth tremble in God's presence.
Declare to the world that Adonai is sovereign. God has steadied the world which stands firm and judges all nations with fairness.
Let the heavens rejoice. Let the earth be glad. Let the sea and it all contains exalt.
Let field and forest sing for joy. Adonai comes to rule the earth, to rule the world justly, the nations with faithfulness. Yismechu Hashemayim b'tagel haaretz, Yeram hayamum lo'o, Ya'alo sadai v'chol hashebo, Ajiralenu kol hatzeyar. Lifnei Adonai kiva lishpot haaretz, yishpot tevel b'tzedek, v'yamim be'emunato.
And now we turn to page 20. We're going to rise from Mizmor David on page 20. Please rise.
Mizmor leDavid, havu l'Adonai b'nei Elim, havu l'Adonai kavod va'oz, havu l'Adonai kevod shemo, ishtachavu l'Adonai b'hadrat kodesh, kol Adonai al hamayim, el hakavod hirim, Adonai Mayim Rabim, Kol Adonai, Bakoa, Kol Adonai, Behada, Kol Adonai, Shove Arazim, Vaisha Bir Adonai, Arzei Halvanon, Vayakidem Kimo Egel, Lebanon Vesirion Kimo Ven Re'emim Kol Adonai Kotzev Lahavotesh Kol Adonai Yachil Midbar Adonai Midbar Kadesh Kol Adonai Yechol Elayalot Vayechesof Ye'aro Uvhechalo kulo omer kavod Adonai lamavu yashav vayeshav Adonai melech liolam Adonai oz li'amo yitain Adonai yevarech et amo v'shalom.
May be seated, page 21, every other stanza. L'chad dodi, you may be seated.
Lecha dodi lekrat kala p'nei Shabbat nekabela. Lecha dodi lekrat kala p'nei Shabbat nekabela. Shamo v'zacho b'dibor echad hishmiyanu el hamyuchad. Adonai echad u'shmo echad l'shemo tiferet v'litila. Lecha dodi lekrat kala P'nei Shabbat nikabela, Migdash melech im melucha, Kol mitziim itok hafecha, Rav lach shevet be'emek habacha, Vehu yachamol alayechem la, Lecha dodi lekrat kala, P'nei Shabbat nikabela. Hitoriri, kiva ore kumi ori, Ori, Shidaberi, Kivod Adonai, Alayek Nigla, Lecha Dodi, Krat Kala, P'nei Shabbat, Nikabela, V'hayulim Shisa Sho, Sayich, V'rachaku Komevalayich, Yasis Alayek Elohayich, Kim Soskat Anal Kala, Lecha Dodi, Lekrat Kala, P'nei Shabbat
We're
nikabela.
going to stand at this time. We'll face the congregational entrance as we welcome in the Shabbat bride.
Bo'i v'shalom materet bala, gam b'simcha v'tzahala, toch emunei yam segula, bo'i chala, lecha dodi lekrat kala, p'nei Shabbat nikabela.
May be seated, and we'll turn to page 23. We're going to be led now into Psalm for Shabbat, page 23.
23.
It is good to acclaim Adonai, to sing your praise, exalted God.
To affirm your love each morning and your faithfulness each night, to the music of the lute and the melody of the harp.
Your works, Adonai, make me glad. I sing with joy of your creation.
How vast your works, Adonai, your designs are beyond our grasp.
The thoughtless cannot comprehend. The foolish cannot fathom this.
The wicked may flourish, springing up like grass, but their doom is sealed, for you are supreme forever.
Your enemies, Adonai, your enemies shall perish. All the wicked shall crumble.
But me you have greatly exalted. I'm anointed with fragrant oil. I've seen the downfall of my foes, and I've heard the despair of my attackers.
The righteous shall flourish like the palm tree. They shall grow tall like the cedar in Lebanon. Planted in the house of Adonai, they will thrive in the courts of our God.
They shall bear fruit even in old age, and they shall be ever fresh and fragrant to proclaim. Adonai is just my rock in whom there ain't no flaw.
We continue now 4 lines from the bottom. Sadika Tamar.
Tzadika Tamar Yefrach Ke'erez Bilvanon Yezke Shetolim Beveit Adonai Bechatrot Eloheinu Yafrichu All Yenuvon B'Seva Dishenim V'Rananim Yehu Lehakid Ki Ashar Adonai Sori Velo Avla Tabo. Top of page 24, and I'm a lucky elevation. Edo techan amnu me'o levekan ava kodesh Adonai le'orech yamim. And now Mortis Kaddish, those observing your site, page 24. Please join me. Yitgadal v'yitgadash shmei rabbah v'yalmadi rakirute v'yamlik malchute v'chaye chon v'yomei chon v'chaye d'chol beit Yisrael ba'agala uvizman kariv v'yamru amen. Yehei shmei rabbah mevorach b'lam omei omaya Yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yitpa'ah v'yitramam v'yitnaseh v'yitdadar v'yitaleh v'yitalal shemei d'kucha brecho la'ela min kol birchata v'shirata tushbachata v'nechamata ta'amiram v'alma v'yamru amen. Yehei shlama rava min shemaya v'chayim aleinu yal kol Yisrael v'yamru amen. Oseh shalom b'mramav, hu ya'aseh shalom, aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael v'yamru amen. And now we rise for the Baruch Hu on page 28.
Baruch Hu et Adonai HaMevarach.
Baruch Adonai HaMevarach le'olam va'ed.
Baruch Adonai HaMevarach le'olam va'ed.
You may be seated. We continue silently on page 28.
Umavir yamamevi laila, umavir ben yamaven laila, Adonai tzivaot shemo. El chavekayam tamid yimloch aleinu, leolam va'ed, Baruch ata Adonai. Amari Barabim, page 29. Avat olam beit Yisrael, Amcha ahavta, Torah u'mitzvot u'kim mishpatim, otanu limareta. Al kein Adonai Eloheinu b'shachbeinu v'kumeinu nasiach b'chukecha v'nismach b'divrei toratecha u'b'mitzvotecha le'olam va'ed ki hem chayenu v'yorech yameinu u'bahem negeh yomam v'layla ואהבתך תשים ממנו לעולמים. ברוך אתה אדוני,
Shema.
אוהב עמו ישראל.
Amen. Top of page 30.
Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad.
V'yahavta et Adonai Elohecha b'chol levavcha v'chol nafshecha v'chol me'odecha v'hayu hadvarim o'ele asher anochi mitzavcha hayom al levavecha v'shinantam levanecha v'dibarta bam v'shivtecha b'veitecha v'velektecha v'darech v'v'shachbecha v'v'kumecha v'kashatam li'on al yadecha v'hayu l'totafot bein einecha v'ketavtam al mezuzot beitecha v'v'sharecha v'haya.
Oh.
Leman yebuim mechem v'ime v'nechem al hadama asher nishba Adonai tavotechem latet lahem kimi hashemayim al
And
haaretz.
together on page 31.
Vayomer Adonai Moshe lemor daber el bnei Yisrael v'amata aleihem v'yasu lahem tzitzit al kanfei bigdeihem ledorotam v'natnu al tzitzit hakana patil techelet v'haya lachem tzitzit Horitem oto, uzachartem et kol mitzvot Adonai, v'yasitem otam v'lo taturu, acharei levavchem v'acharei einechem, asher atem zonim achareihem, leman tizkeru v'yasitem et kol mitzvotai, v'yitem kiroshim lelohechem, Ani Adonai Elohechem Asher Otzeiti etchem me'eretz Mitzrayim liot lachem le'Elohim Ani Adonai Elohechem
Adonai Elohechem emet.
Page
32. ומלכותו ברצון קיבלו עליהם משה בני ישראל לכנו שירה בשמחה רבה ויאמרו כולם מי כמוך באלים אדוני מי כמוך נדר בקודש נורא תהילות אוסף אלה מלכותך ראו בניך בו קיים לפני משה זה עלינו ויאמרו אדוני ימלוך לעולם ונאמר כי בני את יעקב וגאלו מיד חזק ממנו ברוך אתה אדוני גאל ישראל.
Amen. Top of page 33, we'll read together in English.
Help us, Adonai, to lie down in peace
and awaken us again, our sovereign, to light.
Spread over us your shelter of peace. Guide us with your good counsel.
Save us because of your mercy.
Shield us from enemies and pestilence, from starvation, sword, and sorrow. Remove the evil forces that surround us. Shelter us in the shadow of your wings. O God.
Watches over us. A gracious and merciful ruler.
Guard our coming and our good.
Grant us life and peace now and always.
Spread over us the shelter of your peace.
Praise thou, Adonai.
Who spreads the shelter of peace over us.
over all his people Israel, and over Yerushalayim.
ושמור צאתנו ובואנו לחיים ושלום, מעתה ועד עולם. ופרוס עלינו סוכת שלומך, ברוך אתה אדוני.
Shmo.
הפורש סוכת שלום עלינו, ועל כל עמו ישראל, ועל ירושלים.
Now we rise for the Vishamru on the top of page 34.
ושמרו
בני ישראל את השבת לעשות השבת לדורותם ברית עולם.
ושמרו
ושמרו בני ישראל השבת את שבת דורותם ברית עולם.
ביני ובין בני ישראל אותי לעולם, אותי לעולם.
אותי לעולם ושמרו בני ישראל את השבס לעשות השבת לדורותם ברית עולם.
ששת ימים עשה אדוני
עשה אדוני
אל השמיים
ואת הארץ ושמרו בני ישראל את השבס לעשות את השבת לברית עולם.
ביום השביעי שבת וינפש, שבת וינפש, שבת
וינפש את השבס לעשות שבת לדורותם ברית עולם.
יגדל ויתקדש שמי רבה.
אמן.
עלמא תברך חירותי וימליך מלכותי.
בחייכם יומכם ובחיי כל בית ישראל. בעגלה בעגלה ובזמן קריב יאמרו אמן. יהי שמי רבה מבורך לעולם עולם יומיה יתברך.
יתברך וישתבח ויתפאר ויתרומם ויתנשא ויתהדר ויתעלה ויתהלל שמי קדושה
בריחו
ויעלה מכל ברכתה ושירתה
תושבחתה ונחמתה תמירן ביעלמה יאמרו amen. To remain standing for the silent Amidah, page 35A or B, through page 38, and when you're done, you may be seated.
Ashiva Ruach, Morita Goshen.
Let's turn to page 38 for Shalom Rav.
Shalom Rav Yisrael Amcha Tasim Leolam. Shalom Rav Yisrael Amcha Tasim Leolam. Ki atahu melech adon lechol hashalom. Ki atahu melech adon lechol hashalom. Shalom
Shalom
Rav
Rav
Yisrael Amcha Tasim Leolam. Shalom Rav Yisrael Amcha Tasim Leolam. V'tov b'necha levarech et amecha Yisrael v'chol eru kol shach b'shlomecha. Shalom Rav Yisrael Amcha Tasim Leolam. Shalom Rav Yisrael Amcha Tasim Leolam. Tasim Leolam.
Let's read together in the middle of page 38. My God, keep my tongue from evil and my lips from lies. Help me ignore those who would slander me. Let me be humble before all. Open my heart to your Torah that I may pursue your mitzvot. Frustrate the designs of those who plot evil against me. Make nothing of their schemes. Act for the sake of your compassion, your power, your holiness, and your Torah. Answer my prayer for the deliverance of your people. And may the words of my mouth and the meditations of my heart be acceptable to you, my rock and my redeemer. Let's sing together. Oh, say
Shalom Bimroma.
Bimrama.
Oh, Yaseh Shalom Aleinu.
Ve'yakol Yisrael.
Yisrael v'yamru imru imru. Amen.
Yaseh
Oh,
shalom.
Yaseh
Yaseh shalom.
Shalom
Shalom
Aleinu.
aleinu. Yachol Yisrael. Yaseh shalom.
Yaseh Shalom.
Yaseh shalom.
Yaseh Shalom.
Shalom aleinu.
V'yalkol Yisrael.
Yaseh shalom.
Oh, Yaseh Shalom. Shalom Aleinu v'yalkol Yisrael. Yaseh Shalom. Yaseh Shalom. Shalom Aleinu v'yalkol Yisrael. V'yamaru. Amen. May the one who brings peace to his universe bring peace to us and to all the people Israel. Amen.
Amen. And we now turn to page 47, and we'll ask you to please rise for Vayachulu, page 47.
47. Vayechulu hashamayim v'haaretz v'chol tzivam vayechal Elohim bayom hashvi v'melachto asher asa vayishbot bayom hashvi mikol melachto asher asa vayavarech Elohim et yom hashvi Vayikadesh oto, kivo shavad mikom elakto, kivo shavad mikom elakto, asher bara Elohim, asher bara Elohim lasot. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu v'lehei avotenu, Elahei Abraham, Elahei Yitzchak, v'lehei Yaakov, Elohei Sarah, Elohei Rivka, Elohei Rachel, Elohei Leah, Ha'el Hagadol, Hagibor v'Hanora, El Elyon, Konei Shamayim, Va'aretz.
You may be seated at the bottom of 47.
Magen Navot Bidvaro, Mechaye Metim B'Ma'amaro, Ha'el hakadosh she'en kamohu, hameniach le'amo v'yom Shabbat kadsho. Kivam ratza lehaniach lahem, kivam ratza lehaniach lahem, lefanav navod b'irav hafachad, v'nodeh lishmo b'chol yom tamid, me'on habrachot, el hahodaot, Adon hashalom, Mikadesh HaShabbat, Umevarek Shvi'i, Umeniach Bigdusha, Le'amedush Neoneg, Zecher Lemase Vereshi. Top of page 48. Eloheinu v'lehavotenu, ritzevim nuchatenu, kachenu, b'mitzvotecha, v'techokenu b'toratecha, sabeinu mituvecha, v'samchenu v'shuatecha, v'tahel libenu, le'avdecha be'emet, Ve'hanachilenu Adonai Eloheinu B'yahava uvratzon Shabbat kadshecha V'nuchuva Yisrael Mikadashei Shemecha Baruch atah Adonai Mikadesh HaShabbat.
Yitkadal v'yitkadash shemei rabbah.
Amen.
V'yamadi brach yirutei v'yamakmalkutei b'chayechon v'yamechon v'chayechon beit Yisrael. Bagalav izman karev yimaru.
Amen. Yehi shmei Rabbah mevarach. Ve'olam v'lo meyomaya yitbarach.
Barak v'yishtabach v'parvit romam v'yitnaseh v'yitadar v'yitalev v'talav shemei kodeshah.
Brichu.
V'richu le'elam min chavichata v'shirata. Tush v'chata v'nachamata miram v'yamav v'yimru.
Amen.
Amen. Tikabal sodon about on the Chayishal Kazam Bavon Divishmaya v'yimru. Amen.
Amen.
Yehi shalom rabba mit shemaya v'chaim alei v'chayishal v'yimru. Amen.
Amen.
Oseh shalom b'mrum avu yaseh shalom. Aleinu v'yal kol Yisrael v'yimaru.
Amen.
Oh, Danny.
Danny.
By the way, for those of you wondering, this is Danny's Bar Mitzvah 2.0. Yeah, you can put that down. Danny actually became a Bar Mitzvah last year. Many of us were there on Zoom Gali Gali, remember? And we weren't wearing these masks last year, but now we're here in person because Danny's probably the only student I've ever had who said, I want to do it again. I want to do it again. I want to do it again. But this time he wanted to do it in person. And that was so special because we didn't get a chance to really do things together. You know, you were there and I was here. And we didn't really get a chance to stand, as they say back in Rhode Island, they say side by each. Here they say side by side. So one of the things you missed last year was the opportunity to take this cup, which is filled with your favorite grape juice. Told me he doesn't like wine. Kids at the age of 13 love wine, but I don't get it. So they're mature now. All that. We're commanded to sanctify God with yayin v'shechor, right? Wine and
Yes,
spirits.
wine is a
and
symbol of
spirits.
joy, especially for Shabbat and special occasions.
Yeah, so we're commanded to do this, and we're commanded to do it in public because there might be some people that don't have the opportunity to have Kiddush in their own homes. They can't afford it, whatever. So we do it together as a communal setting in the synagogue on Friday night. Danny, what I like to do is bring all of the simchas, all of the joys, all of the life cycle events together. And, you know, kind of like your life is now going full circle. And pretty soon you're going to be taller than me like your brother. But, and he may not remember this, I don't know. But your first life cycle and your first Jewish life cycle was when you were named, and that was when you had your bris. Do you remember that?
I hope not.
You can shake your head. Do you remember that?
No.
Of course not. You were only 8 days old or so. But this one here now, you had 0.1 last year, now you're having 0.2 this year. So the next Jewish life cycle would be when you stand here again someday, not tomorrow, but soon, under a chuppah. Not yet, you're right. No, Mom, not yet. He's got to wait at least 2 more years. And you'll stand under a chuppah. 18 at least, right? And you marry your partner. And when you do that, you also do that with wine as well. So what I like to ask my B'nai Mitzvah students, 0.2, 0.1, doesn't matter, is to hold the Kiddush cup up to the level that you think your partner in life should be. Remember, you're going to grow a little bit more. So hold it up to the point where you would like to have your partner stand. So you want a nice, tall partner.
Well, a basketball
Oh, that
player.
right
I
there?
think.
Yeah, you play basketball, right? Yeah, so you
Alright,
probably
that's
do
okay.
want someone that. Yeah, okay.
No.
That's well, I'm 5'9", so, although I'm probably shrinking, but go 6, go to 6. Let's rise on page 49 for the Kiddush as we sanctify God with the words of the Kiddush.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam borei peri hagafen. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kitshanu b'mitzvotav v'ratzavanu v'shabbat kadsho b'yavav ratzonin kilanu zikaron l'maaseh v'reishit ki hu yam techila l'mikrei kodesh zecher l'tziat Mitzrayim kivanu b'chata Leotanu kidashta mikol hamim v'shabat kadshecha v'yava u'ratzonin kaltanu Baruch atah Adonai mikadesh hashabat. All right, you can drink the.
You really can't drink with your mask on, so you
Go ahead. There you go, the extra sugar. You may be seated, everybody.
it is grape juice, right? Yeah. Not a boy,
No,
yeah.
no, it tastes like it.
I don't lie, kiddo. Why don't you have a seat over with the rabbi over there? Yeah, you can leave that here if you want. Or you can finish it if you want. You don't have to. It was grape juice. It was grape juice. It was grape juice. That's for me for tomorrow night. All right, go have a seat, will you? Now, before I forgot, I did forget, I do want to give us an opportunity to pray for the people that might be ill. And now that I have him over there, I'm going to take my mask off, unless you all want me to put it back on. So sweet. We have a custom. I should have done it before the Kiddush, but it doesn't matter. It's never too late. We normally do this in the morning, but we also at night, since the pandemic started, we ask people to pray for people who are not feeling well, people that are ill. And so we've added it to our Friday night service. So I'm going to start the Misha Berach for those who are ill. And when I stop, if you wish to say the name or names of people who you were praying for healing, you may do so out loud. And then when I hear quiet, I'll continue. Misha Berach Avotenu Avraham Yitzchak v'Yaakov Sarah Rivka Rachel v'Leah v'Yivarech v'Yarafeh et. Kol hacholim b'kihila kadosha. HaKadosh Baruch Hu Yimalei Rachamim Aleichem lahachazikam u'lefortam v'yishlach lahem me'orar refuah shlema shamayim v'rat nefesh v'tok she'echolei Yisrael Shabbatim elizoku f'okarav lavo hashtav v'garav azman kariv v'nomar amen. May God bring blessing and healing to all those, the names we've just mentioned, those we may or may not know of who are ill, and those we pray for on our personal prayer lists. Those in the congregational family who are ill, may the Holy One mercifully restore them to health and to vigor, granting them physical and spiritual well-being together with people everywhere who may be ill. Misha Be'erach Avotenu Mekor habracha leimotenu. May the source of strength who bless the ones before us help us find the courage to make our lives a blessing, and let us say Amen. Misha be'erachi motenu mekor habracha le'avotenu. Bless those in need of healing with refuah shlema, the renewal of body, the renewal of spirit, and let us say Amen. Ask God to hear our prayers for refuah shlema for all who are ill. Well, tonight we came on a very special Shabbat. Well, they're all special, but this one is different in that it's Bereshit. We're starting over again. We just finished, as Adele mentioned, at the good news part of our service tonight. We had Simchat Torah here the other night. We had dancing, we had kids, we had people in the building, people in the synagogue, and enjoying life. It was a really beautiful experience. And so this Shabbat is another beautiful opportunity, because as you walked up, you saw the big tent. See life. See things happening, you know. Masks are still on, but we're getting there. So I want to tell you a little bit tonight about life and the life cycles. We just saw Danny now hold the Kiddush cup and start this process of Bar Mitzvah 2.0. But there are other things that go on in the world. There's funerals. And then, of course, we know there are unveilings. And so people come to me often and ask me to officiate at an unveiling. And I explained the history of this very modern custom. And I actually try to convince the family to visit the grave and say prayers for themselves. And the question is, why do I do this? It seems the Jewish unveiling is less than 150 years old. It comes from us, from an unknown New York Reform rabbi, who, after returning from the unveiling of his Methodist friend, called his peers and said, "What a great way to make a few extra bucks." Now, even with this knowledge, many modern Jews still insist on wanting clergy at an unveiling ceremony, and that they have us to officiate these services. And I want you not to take this wrong. The unveiling service can be a very beautiful, beautiful service. But nowhere in the Jewish history will anyone find a requirement for a halacha to conduct an unveiling ceremony. Mark a grave, yes. Unveiling, not necessary. There's nothing wrong with an unveiling, but that's not what we Jews need to do. What is required is that we visit a grave, and we visit especially the graves of our loved ones. More importantly, while we're there, we should say a few prayers, recite some psalms, and remember our loved ones in a very, very personal way. So that is why I suggest usually to families to go to the graves themselves a lot of times. Because of COVID, however, I've changed my feelings a little bit, because last year some families couldn't even attend the funerals. So now the unveilings have taken on a whole new meaning. But normally, it's a nice opportunity for people to follow the tradition and go on their own. This way, people can make their own decisions, whether they want an officiant or to do it on their own. It's fine. So that said, a few years ago, BCE, before the COVID era, a certain rabbi, who I will not name, called me up and asked me to do him a favor. Rabbis who usually call other rabbis to do you a favor, Rabbi, right? You know where this is going, right? Yeah. I said, what was the favor? He said a widower had decided with his rabbi to officiate at his wife's unveiling. And this was the day that the unveiling was scheduled. The rabbi called me because he had just been asked to officiate at a funeral that was scheduled to happen at the same time as the scheduled unveiling. He told me that since funerals pay much better than unveilings, could I please pinch hit for him at the unveiling. Now, I'm going to be completely transparent here. I was quite taken aback by this rabbi. To me, it's not about the money. It's about serving. I felt, and I usually tell people when they ask, what does it cost for an unveiling? The rabbi's group suggests this particular fee in the community, but then I always say, or whatever you feel comfortable with, if anything at all. But when I heard this rabbi say that funerals pay more, I was ticked. But I remained professional, and I tried not to accept this request in a gentlemanly way. So what I did was I explained to the rabbi my views of an unveiling, and I told him that this gentleman can do it on his own. It didn't work. He said to me he had promised the widower that the unveiling would happen, and he said it would be led by a rabbi, and he seemed quite conflicted about not being able to keep the promise. So when I asked him if he told the man about the switch to me, he said he did not, because the only time he had ever met the man was at his wife's funeral, and that he was sure I would be, and I'm going to quote here, that I would be good enough for this. Then you know what this wonderful rabbi did? I'm not talking about me, the other rabbi. The good rabbi offered me a chance to do an even greater mitzvah. You know what that mitzvah was? He offered me the opportunity to give him 3/4 of the honorarium that I would receive for the unveiling, since he was responsible for getting me the gig. I politely thanked him for this graciousness. And now you know why I won't tell you his name. Even though he's not from this community, I'm so embarrassed by this, I would not slander him, as Lashon Hara, as we all know, is wrong. However, I'm going to tell you this. This rabbi presents himself as being very observant. And like I say all the time, being observant does not necessarily make us religious. Anyway, after getting the information from this rabbi, I called the widower and asked him to meet me at the cemetery 45 minutes before the scheduled service so that he could properly introduce me to the deceased wife. When I arrived and connected with the widower, I met a short man, about 5'2" or 3. He was wearing a brown suit. His head was balding. He would never stand out in the crowd. It was then when I learned there would be no one else coming to the unveiling, since his children lived so far away, and he didn't want to burden or inconvenience them or anyone else. It was only the two of us. We got into our cars and I followed him to the grave. When we got there, I asked him to sit in my car and talk to me. It was a little chilly. Our conversation started with me asking him how long he was married. And he said 48 years. When I asked him what the marriage was like, his answer surprised me. Devoid of any emotion, he looked at me and he said, the first 32 years were very good. And that was all he said. I repeated with surprise in my voice, the first 32 years were good. What about the last 16? And do you know what he said? Again, devoid of any emotion. Elaine had advanced MS and a rather severe case of osteoporosis. So the last 16 years got progressively more difficult. He continued with his very quiet, matter-of-fact, unemotional voice. I had to sell my business so that I could take care of her. I cannot tell you how hard it was to watch the love of my life suffer more every day without anyone able to help her. When he finished his story, I said, my God, you took care of your wife like that for 16 years? How did you do it? He shrugged his shoulders and answered, you have to do what you have to do. And I kept playing that in my head over and over again. You have to do what you have to do. In fact, I couldn't think of anything else. What did he mean by you have to do what you have to do? Well, most of us have heard that saying. How many of us really live that way? I was so impressed with this man's devotion and commitment to his wife, so much so that I told him I thought he was a true hero. I told him that while we usually think of a hero as someone who jumps into a burning building to save lives, the fact that he gave up everything to take care of his eternal soulmate day in and day out for 16 years, well, that, my friends, is true heroism. You know what he said? He told me, still with a calm, unemotional voice, look, my wife was not a burden. She loved me with all her heart. Until the end, we talked and shared our love for each other. Even when she could not take care of herself, she was never a burden. I know she would have done the same for me, and you have to do what you have to do. He said that phrase again and again, and we began walking to the grave. When we arrived, we stood in silence until I was able to chant the 23rd Psalm and the Kel Meloi Rachamim, the memorial prayer. And as we were ready to leave, I asked him if he belonged to a synagogue. He said no. We used to belong to one until my wife got sick. But as time went by, I realized prayer could not help either of us. So I gave up on God. Since he had given up on God, I asked him why he wanted the unveiling. He told me that he thought it was a sign of respect. With that, we shook hands and said goodbye. I then got home. I began my daily work calls and business. It was at that time I looked at my phone and noticed on my caller ID that I had received a call from the rabbi. As I was deciding if I needed to return his call, because he left no voicemail, the phone rang. It was the widower. Sensing a bit of anger in his voice, remember earlier there was no emotion, I asked him what was wrong. He told me that the rabbi had called him to ask how much he had paid me for the services. The widower said that he had explained to the rabbi that I suggested that it would be more appropriate to give to tzedakah to organizations such as MS or osteoporosis, and to do so in his wife's memory. This rabbi told the widower that I was wrong to tell him that, and insisted that he send him money for arranging the unveiling. This, by the way, is a true story. It's hard to believe. The widower called to tell me he had no intention of giving this rabbi a dime, and that he intended to follow my advice and give to tzedakah and to those charities. Then this man blew me away. You know what he said? He asked me if I thought he could find God again. I don't have to tell you what that question did to me. As soon as I regained my composure, I reconfirmed that I considered him a hero for what he had done day in and day out for those 16 years. I told him he does not have to do anything to find God. Why? For 16 years, he had worked as a full partner with God. I told him that he needs to open himself up to God, and explained that this requires a level of faith. We talked about the very deep and very personal journey that he would be on, and that it would be difficult at times. He thanked me and asked if he could call me from time to time. I told him to call me anytime. This Shabbat, we restart the reading of the Torah from the beginning, Bereshit. We read about God's creation. We read about the first 10 generations of human beings. One of the things of interest is that the gift of free will was never once used by any of those to choose God. We find that each generation, their morals and ethics degenerated. Finally, we meet this guy named Noah. And tomorrow afternoon at Mincha, Danny will read about this man when he reads from the Torah. Noah was the first person in the Torah to actually open himself up to God. Even though he was a bit selfish, he still opened himself up to God. It allowed him, in fact, to reboot the world. So what does this have to do with the gentleman I met at the unveiling? Since we met, he's called me several times over the years. Like our Torah reading, in the beginning, he tried to share his feelings with God, but he did it on his terms, not interested in God and what God wanted. He was like Adam and Eve, Adam and Chava in the garden. They ignored that God told them not to eat the forbidden fruit, but they expected God to do things for them. As for the widower, with each subsequent call, the man sounded a little bit more encouraged. The last time he called was between Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur. He would call me just about every year, and he called me this year as well. And you know what he told me? He told me that for the first time, he got the urge to say Kiddush for his wife, and that he planned to go to the synagogue in his community on Yom Kippur. More importantly, for the first time, I could hear a tear in his voice. Unlike the first time we spoke, he no longer spoke in a soft, matter-of-fact voice, but his speech was filled with emotion. Over the past years, I've watched and listened to a man slowly choose God. I watched a man choose to look for and find enough strength to free himself, imposed the exile in the dark ark that he had built for himself. I watched this man choose to grow from a person holding back his emotion into a person who finally found a level of fulfillment that only a relationship with God can provide. I asked him what made him open up to welcoming God into his life. Do you know what he said? You have to do what you have to do. Those of us who choose life, to live a life of tzedakah and tikkun olam, to repair the world, we know that it is because you have to do what you have to do. So after all these years, what could cause me to tell you this story today? Why would I tell you such a story tonight? As I said, the man did go to synagogue on Yom Kippur. And he finally said Kaddish for his wife for the first time since her death many years ago. And yesterday I was told that he passed away. In fact, I was asked to officiate at his funeral, if I could, as my name was on the pre-need form as clergy, the person to contact. But unfortunately, because I don't live in that community any longer, and it was too close to Shabbat for me to officiate, I had to decline. However, I did recommend a rabbi that I know would not just be good enough, but who was truly a mensch and would consider this an honor as I had. You see, his synagogue did not take the current pandemic as seriously as they should have. When he attended the services over the High Holy Days, he received and died of COVID. He got this because while he did what he had to do, the congregation he went to did not. One thing we should learn from the entire book of Bereshit is that we must take responsibility for what we do. Adam blamed Eve. Cain blamed Abel. In fact, everybody through the entire book, Bereshit, never took responsibility for what they did. The widower had finally found God, but due to the failure of the synagogue to protect its members, he died. And 4 others who attended Yom Kippur are recovering in a hospital. And do you know what the synagogue said? They said those 5 people came to the shul with COVID or did not wear the proper face coverings. In other words, they took no responsibility and blamed the victims. This is exactly what the book of Bereshit tells us not to do. Our congregation's leaders, our officers, our board believe that you have to do what you have to do. And we're serious about taking the responsibility for what we do. And that is why we're wearing masks. That's why we're serving food in a tent. That's why we're encouraging social distancing this Shabbat as we celebrate this young man, Danny's 2.0 Bar Mitzvah. And we will gladly do what we have to do to keep all of us safe and close to God. Look, maybe we're being more cautious than many like, but thank God we continue to do what we have to do. And that is the message of the book of Bereshit. That is the message of how we are to live. And that is what we will do this Shabbat as we celebrate a simcha, a joy together in health and happiness. For a young man who said to me last year, to his parents really, I want to do it again. Why? You have to do what you have to do. I'm looking forward to seeing you called to the Torah tomorrow, young man, because we couldn't do that last year. But now we will. And may you go from strength to strength, and may your family be blessed. And as we welcome you and your family this Shabbat, let's enjoy the Shabbat weekend in health and happiness. Shabbat shalom to all. As I return my mask, let's rise on page 51 for Aleinu. Page 51, we rise for Aleinu.
Aleinu l'shavek l'adon hakol, l'tekedu l'aliyot bereshit, shelo asan kugei haratzon, v'lo samanu k'mishpachot ha'adama, shelo sam chalkenu kahem, v'gor aleinu k'chol hamonam, v'anachnu korim, u'mishachavim u'modim, l'pnei melech v'pnei hamlachim, Akadosh Baruch Hu.
Takatu b'toratecha, Adonai imloch le'olam ha'ed.
Adonai lemelech al-kol haaretz, Vayom hahu, yeh Adonai echad, U'shemo echad, U'shemo echad.
You may be seated. This week, the congregation will lovingly recall the yortzites of the following people: Francis Merlino, Mary Newman, Rose Schumann, Samuel Batcherman, Sadie Jacobson, Beatrice Schneider, Sophie Stein, Edward Eisenman, Arthur Horowitz, Harvey Robert Lange, Shirley S. Labarsky, Carl Shane, Benjamin Willens, Jesse Friedman, Mac G. Paul, Joseph Pollock, Ina Winokur, Estelle Dubin. Are there any other yortzites that are this week that you wish to announce? Having heard none, may the faith that binds us to our loved ones be a continuing source of comfort as we now invite those mourning and observing a yortzeit to rise and to praise God's name with the words of the Kaddish, page 52. Yitgadal v'yitkadash shemei Rabbah, v'yalma divrach hirutei, v'yamlich malchutei, v'chayechon v'yomechon v'chayei d'chol beit Yisrael, v'gala u'bizman kariv v'yamru amen. Yehei shmei Rabbah mevarach, le'olam v'lomei maya. Yiparach v'yishtabach v'yipa'ar v'yitromam v'yitnaseh, v'yithadar v'yithaleh v'yithalal, shemei d'kedusha b'richu. Le'ela min kol birchata v'shirata, tushbachata v'nechamata, damiran v'yalma v'yamru amen. Yehei shlama rabba min shemaya, v'chayim aleinu v'al kol Yisrael v'yamru amen. Oseh shalom b'mroma.
Wow.
Hu ya'aseh shalom.
Aleinu
Aleinu v'al kol Yisrael v'imru.
Amen.
Amen. May be seated. Adele Labarsky has tonight's announcement. Adele Labarsky, for those who don't know, is our president of our shul.
Shabbat shalom, everybody. So as I watched Danny, I thought about all the times that he did such an awesome job at our Purim spiels, dressed as either Queen Esther or Vashti or Annie, that's right, with the red wig and everything. And so some of the plays were on the bimah, some of the plays were on the stage, but Danny had this awesome personality that you could tell he didn't care what his role was. He was just going to have fun, and he did have fun. And I hope you have fun this weekend. Mazel tov to your family. You know, when Jason was bar mitzvah, I remember that Friday night Jason was sitting over there, and I was sitting over there, and I just like, I'm just going to go over and say hello to Jason. So I went over there, and I said to him, what's your favorite candy, Jason? So he told me, and so the next day I brought him candy. So this time I decided I was going to ask your mother what your favorite candy was. So Danny, don't eat it all at once. But tomorrow, as you're getting ready for your bar mitzvah, your mother told me that you like M&Ms.
I don't like M&Ms. I love M&Ms.
Oh, you love M&Ms. Anyway, Danny, so all day long tomorrow, don't tell your parents I said you can have this, but you can have M&Ms. All right?
Thank you.
You're welcome. Yeah, you're welcome. Services tomorrow morning are at 9:30. Our minion services are at 9 a.m. on Sunday mornings. No evening service on Sundays. We have a minion on Sunday through Thursday at 7 p.m., both in person and on Zoom. Volunteers are needed to help clean our playground this Sunday, October 3rd at 10 a.m. We are going to revitalize our playground. That was a playground many years ago. Many people remember their children being in nursery school in the playground. Many of our current parents who have children in religious school remember the playground as they were US wires. And someone even told me that they remember in that playground, there was like a tunnel, and that's where she had her first kiss. So just, so, you know, that playground has a lot of meaning for everybody. Lunch and Learn will continue with the rabbi on Thursday, October 21st on Zoom. And we have a coat drive. Don't bring the beginning of November. Please bring the coats after October 24th. And information can always be found on our website and Constant Contact and Shabbat Shalom. And Danny, you have the best smile. I can tell, even with his eyes, you don't even have to see his face. He has the best smile, and he's always been like that. And you know, I know you're gonna do an awesome job for me. So, all right. Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat shalom.
Well, he has a great smile. I know because I saw it every single week for a couple of years on Zoom. It was great. Tomorrow you will see his face when he's up here tomorrow doing his thing. He won't have to wear his mask when he's doing his things, but we try to keep each other safe up here tonight. So thank you for bearing with us.
The regular tune?
I think we're going to go out afterwards too for the Oneg as well. So you're all welcome to join us for the Oneg Shabbat right afterwards. I think we're going to be in the tent. Yes, right? Yeah. So we'll do a little schmoozing out there after the service. Let's conclude with Yigdal, page 53.
Yigdal Elohim Chai v'yish tabach v'imtah v'yenet el mitziuto echad v'yen yachid ki yehudon elam b'gam mein tzof liyachduto ein lo demut haguf v'yeino guf lo na'aroch elav kedushato kadmon l'chol davar asher nivra Rishon v'en reshit l'reshito. Hino Adon olam b'chol notzar. Yoreh gedulato malchuto. Shefan v'uato netano. Elan segulato v'tifarto. Lo kam b'Yisrael kimo she'od navi. Umabit et timunato. Torah temet natan liyamoel al yad neviyon eman beito Lo yachli fo'el ve'lo yamidato li'olamim lizulato. Sofevio deya sitarenu, mabilus of davar bekadmato. Gomer le'ish chesed kimifalo, noten l'rasha ra kirishato. Yishlak l'ketzi yamin mishichenu, liftot mechakeke et Yeshuato, meitim Yechayael berov chasto. Baruch Adei Ad Shem Tehilato, Meitim Yechayael B'Rov Chasto. Baruch Adei Ad Shem Tehilato. Shabbat Shalom, everybody.
Shalom, Yasher Koach. We'll see you outside in the new sukkah.
Very nicely done, Danny. See you tomorrow, kid. I know, don't do that. I think it was. It's a shame, especially when somebody comes around. And they die. Yes.